This is the Amp Hour Podcast. Released December 27th, 2018. Episode 422. Stick 'em on whales. Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Chris Gamble of Contextual Electronics.
I'm Alicia White of Embedded FM.
I'm Chris White of Embedded.fm.
Not a fan of the show name still. I think we could do better than that, but I think it's what we're stuck with now. Now that we've done this, 2-3 times now?
We could call it something else. We could call it the Amp... No, we did Embedded once, didn't we?
Yeah.
We did Embedded once, yeah.
Well, I mean, we could be
either
like
way,
the Avengers, the greatest crossover movie of all time.
Yeah. How you guys doing? It's been
A
well,
year?
we talk a lot on Slack, but it's been a year in the talkies. So what?
It's a year that feels like 10,
Yeah, it's been a long year.
but I haven't accomplished a damn thing.
Yeah,
You have, Chris. You've been doing a lot of things.
I've been doing some things. Yeah, I left my job. I'm now consulting. I announced a conference that I'm running. So yeah, a couple things. It's been good though.
And conference is the KiCad conference? KiCad
That's right.
conference? I'm just going to keep
QuiCat is how
good.
you're-
QuiCad, as Brian Benchoff says. Yeah, it's the KiCon is going to be in April of 2019 in Chicago, where I live, and I'm really excited about it. You guys going to come out for it? Huh?
No.
Oh. I would have predicted that, but I'm still a little sad.
I mean, if you get Harrison Ford to give keynote or something for the
Keynote
keynote,
it? Okay.
Oh,
We should call it
no,
the keynote.
I've never actually opened said program, so I'm not your target demographic.
That'll also do it. Yeah, right.
I
Yeah, if
have,
people are interested, I'll link it in, but it's probably not as many of the embedded listeners as I'd hope for, huh?
I don't know,
Probably more than I mean.
more than you
Our
expect.
listeners are probably more interested than, or more targeted than we are. So
I mean, we don't even go to San Jose anymore to go to conferences.
Oh,
yeah, we just go
All
over
right,
there
well,
for croissants.
that's a good reason, though. What kind are we talking here? Like chocolate croissants?
Oh yeah, chocolate
Chocolate almond.
Yeah.
Okay, that's worth the drive.
And
good.
consulting. You've been doing that for 6 months now?
No, only like 4.5, 5 months. Back in August. So.
But it's going well.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's someone had, so we had basically, we had been putting, you guys are always so good about show notes, and I saw one of the questions from the embedded Slack was asking about skill building and stuff like that, and I'd love to talk about that kind of stuff. But that was one of the things that I was most excited about, is that my skills, I was doing a lot of marketing stuff, and my skills were just falling off, and I don't like that. And now I'm just kind of back in doing 3D modeling and doing, circuit design and doing some firmware stuff, and it's not easy by any stretch, but it's great to be back into it. And so I really like that.
No, that's great. The great thing about consulting too is, you end up getting exposed to a lot of different things. Whereas even if you went back full time, I'm a double E full time at megacorp.com.
Yeah. Right.
You might find that you still feel like you're not learning anything, or your skills are stagnating because you're doing one kind of design over and over again. So yeah, I really liked consulting for that, because it was like, these people need this, and I have no idea how to do that, but I better learn really quick.
Well, you've both been consultants for a long time, or you have done a lot in the past. So like, what should I keep an eye out for on the, when's it going to turn? Like, what made you go back to Chris, I guess you're back at a full-time gig, right?
I can't really say what made me go back without sounding like an ass, so I'm not gonna.
Is it
I'm
money?
not gonna
Is that
say.
Yeah.
Yes, let's say that.
Okay.
Well, this is probably something I shouldn't discuss openly.
Okay,
right
no, that's
now,
fine.
so.
That's fine. But at least you've gone back and forth before, right?
Yeah, I was doing consulting, and then I went to ShotSpotter because they needed my skills, and it was a really interesting company. So they didn't want contract because they wanted to develop algorithms in house, and so I did. I went back to full time, and then went back to contracting, and have applied for a full-time job in the last year, not because I don't like contracting, just because I wanted that job.
I see. Okay.
And it didn't work out, although now I have a contract with those people. So we'll see.
Okay, I've got an answer now.
Okay, go ahead.
Part of it was because I was made an ultimatum. It wasn't stated as an ultimatum, but it was probably an ultimatum. And I had a choice whether to go do something else or continue what I was doing with the people I liked working with and go full time. So that was a large part of it. And, it's been good so far. Things are getting a little full-timey.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's more meetings, there's more politics. There's all of the stuff that I've experienced, I suppose.
Yeah, and the big thing for me, which is kind of personal and idiosyncratic, is I found that when I was full-time, especially at startups where I was, where I had a lot more responsibility of a smaller team, I was way too emotionally connected. So any decision that people above me made that I thought was ill-advised, I would get kind of angry.
Yeah,
and I'd get angry in meetings and stuff, and I really didn't like that. And that was one of the reasons I went contracting the first time, which is now almost 10 years ago. So, yeah, going full time, all those meetings and things that when you're a contractor, you can kind of say, well, I'm hourly. You guys can talk all you want.
You don't want to pay for me to be there.
And if you don't want to listen to what I have to say, then it's your dime anyway.
Yeah,
now it's like, wow, this is, the company is, there's some emotional investment there. So now decisions like that or arguments like that become more personal. So there is a different kind of psychology that I find that I have when I'm working full time versus contract.
And how do you define contract versus consulting? I always keep getting those intermeshed.
You have a...
I do. Contracting is where you do the implementation and the work. Consulting is where you usually work more with the managers to create a plan that somebody else implements. So if you're doing architecture work without implementation, then that's consulting, or mentoring, or doing the reviews. That's more the consulting. But when you are, sitting down to do the technical work, that's contracting. And I enjoy doing both. Sometimes it's really fun to come in and be their sounding board or to solve bugs that they're having trouble with. But sometimes you come into a situation and you don't get all the information you should. And so you spend a lot of time consulting for things that don't make sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a formal definition, but it's I like it. People use it interchangeably. I've always used it kind of interchangeably. But yeah, consulting, you tend to be dropped in for a shorter period of time, maybe. Like we have a specific problem that we need your expertise, and here's our code. Could you look at it and tell us what's wrong? Or here's our board. Could you fix it?
Right.
Less about, okay, well, for the next 6 months, we'd like you to work on this part of the system and finish it for us.
I was thinking about the contract being like an actual chunk of time, like, oh, it's only 3 months, but you're here for that whole time and we get you for half of your time or something like that. That felt more like a contract kind of thing. Obviously there's a contract in both cases, but whatever. Versus here and there kind of stuff, like a consultancy kind of feels like.
So how are you finding stuff? Are you marketing yourself? Are you working with your existing network?
Some would say I'm marketing myself right now, Chris. Call today to talk to Chris Gamble.
For 3 easy payments of $19.99.
Are you doing it under your own name or under Analog Life?
Under Analog Life, yeah. Yeah, I'm back to use. I mean, I've had an LLC for a long time, but it's. I think I'm going to probably try and switch to I was thinking about your accounting episode a couple weeks ago, and I'm probably going to switch to an S corp next year and do that kind of thing, and it works out fine. I don't know. I right now I'm just like a 1099 and a Schedule C employee. Not even an employee, I guess. I'm just.
No, you can't say that. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm just a guy waiting here to do circuits for you, and yeah, it works okay for now. But I think next year it'll be a little bit more formalized and payroll-y and stuff like that. And so I really and if people haven't listened to your episode about that stuff, I always recommend that. I think that was it was a very unexpected but a great episode about understanding how the accounting stuff works, and it can eat a lot of your day if if you do it right or wrong.
Eat so much of your day.
Especially if you make a mistake. As
Yeah,
complicated
definitely,
as
yeah.
electronics and software is,
Yeah.
an untraceable error in your books is often much harder to solve.
Yeah.
I haven't done our books yet. Don't curse
Like all
it.
year? Or just for the month?
I usually do it by the quarter.
Oh, okay. That's not bad then. Yeah. You know, it's like silly things for us. Like, so we have very generous patrons, and so we get donations as you do, I'm sure, and people should support Embedded FM's Patreon.
And amp hours.
Yeah, sure. But it shows up as like a payment is like, so like we get say we get a $5 donation, PayPal sends a $4.28 once a month. And then that is like a journal entry, and that's like a thing you have to deal with, and it's like, I'm very grateful for the donation, but it's just like these small things that I just need to clean up my process and stuff.
And Patreon doesn't do that. They send it all as one chunk, and that's nice.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we still have people from the old days as well, but it's me and Dave talked about business a couple weeks back, and it was two people who don't know anything about business just complaining about business pretty much. But it definitely changes the focus. You get to do less technical stuff, and I think the thing I always think about is, as you get bigger and bigger as a company, that stuff must just take over your life. Like that just must, like having actual employees and dealing with
and you need to hire people
larger
to deal with
invoices.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I mean, I think the bookkeeper is one of the first 5 people you hire, because it does take up so much of your time if you want to do something other than play with QuickBooks.
It's true. So other than like the businessy stuff, it's been really good. And I should mention too, if people on your channel haven't heard on the Amp Hour, I do have a consulting forum now, and that's been very helpful. It's semi-private, so people share their names. You have to apply for it. I'll put a link in for the application. But people that are consulting or contracting, that's the main focus. If people are getting into that space, they can also apply. But it's been really good just for like, putting stuff out there of things that are having issues with and best practices and things like that. And it's been really helpful for me and hopefully for other people that are there. So I like that. It's, because it's just
idea.
like putting on Twitter would be a little bit different, I think.
Well, it's hard on Twitter to say this part of the contract looks a little odd to me. Can anybody tell me if it's ever been used against them or what they think of it? And on a smaller forum where everyone, it's easier.
Yeah, and I mean, I've even put out a couple people have come to me with gigs that I just couldn't do, either because of skills or because of timing, and so I've already put a couple there too. And I think one of them has worked out of the 3 that I've put there, so that's encouraging. I don't know if that'll work longer term. They'll have to be remote, obviously, and but I do wonder. Like, I mean, both of you work remote, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, where do you see remote work going? I mean, like, do you think that that's still a consulting thing that's going to keep happening, or is that increasing, decreasing? What's the trends you're seeing?
I don't see it decreasing really, because the demand for talent is so high right now still. A lot of small places are looking for whatever they can get, and some of the small places are in remote places. Like, you've had contracts come across from like Denver and
Denver and Boulder always seem willing to do remote. Yeah.
So
okay.
It's like, well, you're not going to get as vast a pool of talent out of Colorado maybe, but if you are willing to work remote, then you can, pull in Bay Area people or Boston people or what have you.
Chicago.
So I don't see it decreasing.
Chicago next, I think.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay.
I don't think it's decreasing. I do think there's a tendency for larger companies to go through this period of everyone needs to sit next to each other, and we're getting rid of all remote workers, and we're consolidating. And I've seen that happen a couple times, and doesn't tend to fix any problems.
No, of course, yeah. If you're not communicating next to each other, you're not going to communicate. Or if you're not communicating remote, it's not going to help if you're sitting next to each other.
But yeah, I don't see it decreasing. Do you?
No, I don't. The tools are getting cheaper. So it used to be having your own oscilloscope or your own logic analyzer was too expensive. So you had to go in and use theirs, a shared resource
Oh, yeah.
in a
Yep.
whole company. But now, I have my gear. I have a soldering station that's not bad and it exceeds my abilities. So if I break something so bad it needs more soldering than I can do here, I would have had to bug somebody at work anyway. And it's amazing how fast the postal system will work if you're only going
Yeah.
a couple 100 miles.
Now, at least for software, the collaboration tools have gotten better too. Like most people use GitHub, for a small company, and Git's reasonably good for collaborating, and it has all the code review stuff you need, and it's and it's in the cloud, so you don't have to have infrastructure at your company that somebody needs to share. I don't know, is that true for electrical stuff?
I mean,
Or
these days
not
I'm
so
using
much?
GitHub for all
Yeah,
of my
okay.
all my repos for like all of my hardware repos are on GitHub and similar. Sometimes Bitbucket or what's the other one? GitLab, I guess too. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
who cares, right? I mean, like it's all the same on my end. And yeah, I mean, one time, I mean, I think it's interesting seeing when and if the hardware people that I'm working with know how to use it. I think that's definitely a skill that hardware people should be working on if they don't already know how to do it. Command line Git is really important, and understanding how and when to do commits and all that other stuff. But I think that is much more prevalent than it used to be.
Well, I'm
yeah.
gonna take a plug here for one of our shows, and that is YOLO Snarf, where we talked about Git and version control as a theory. As the idea was to have a basics episode where we just talked about it, and we sort of defined a fake version control system called YOLO, and then we would just make up commands to describe the general process. And it worked out really well for me because I don't love Git. Maybe it just isn't the way my brain works. Maybe I haven't used it well.
Git except Linus.
Oh, I kind of like it. I like it.
Linus and Chris.
But the YOLO episode, I started thinking about, okay, so if YOLO was a real thing, how would I explain it? How would I do it? And then I would type Git and whatever I would have put into YOLO into Google, and suddenly I got a lot better at Git because I got a lot better at thinking about what it is I wanted to do instead of just doing
yeah.
Git reset remote head purple penguins. And that command
Don't
never
ever
worked
type
for
that.
me.
That command is very dangerous. You should never type that command.
Yeah. I think the big thing with hardware is that it's because you can't really merge stuff.
Right.
Well, you can, but it would be a mess.
Not easy.
Yeah. But most hardware people aren't working like that anyways, right? It's a lot of doing a chunk of work, handing it off to someone, doing a chunk of work, handing it off to someone, back and forth like that. So I think from that perspective, revision control can work great for that stuff. But yeah, I love it. I don't know. I sure as hell love it when KiCad crashes, which still happens. So
And
yeah,
you'll lose an hour or two or a days of work instead of
yeah,
weeks.
yeah, right.
So you
So
did a show
it's-
recently where you were talking to Jeff Kaiser and Dave about your
This
view
was
on the
last week?
industry. Was it last
Yeah.
week? I'm
Yes.
so behind on podcasts. I got into an audiobook and then it was a trilogy, and now I'm just like,
Oh,
okay, it'll be
Wait,
another
hold
3
on.
months.
We'll take a pause on Jeff and Dave. What's the audiobook?
Oh, it's Ilona Andrews. It starts with Clean Sweep and it goes through 3 others. And it's kind of silly, but it's also really fun.
Yeah. Okay. I'm down. Clean
Science
sweep.
fiction.
I was just doing. I just did the second book in the what's the sci-fi show? They made it into a sci-fi show, but I haven't watched it yet. It was Leviathan Wakes, and then
The
Caliban
Expanse.
Oh,
War.
The Expanse. Yeah.
The Expanse. Yeah. Oh man. And the audiobook was amazing for the second one.
I thought the book for those were a lot better than the sci-fi shows.
Yeah, I haven't watched the show yet, so okay. Well, I'll check that
Okay.
out. The quick interlude, so that's good. Ilona Andrews, that's good.
What was the question?
So they were talking about
Oh,
what's your view on the industry, and
Yeah.
and Chris thought up his answer many hours after they recorded. So I figured
Yeah.
we should give him a shot to So, Chris Gamble,
Yeah.
what is your view on the way the industry
Ooh.
is going?
That's a great question, Alicia. I'm glad you asked it. You ever notice that people do that in interviews?
Radio announcer voice, even.
Yeah. That's always like the stall that people do.
Oh yeah, that in media trading, that's what they tell you to do. That's a great question. Or I'm really, really glad you brought up your point. That's just waste 2 seconds while your brain answers it. Okay.
I've forgotten what the question was, but yeah, I'm glad we went on that interlude. So the thing we were talking, we ended up just kind of diverging into the hype curve and stuff like that, and that was silly just because we were floundering. I was floundering. But one thing I actually was thinking about, and then there was a video that was posted today on your Slack channel that would actually hit this perfectly, was just how PCB prototyping has changed. And so on your Slack channel, one of the people had posted a video about actually showing the different the quality of prototyping PCBs over the past 8 years, and it is pretty stark. So it was user Andy Brown on YouTube. I'll link that in. But not even just the quality. I mean, the quality has definitely changed, but it's even more so just the cost. It's just so cheap. And so I've come to this idea of like doing what I call Lego prototyping, and the idea of like you could just take modules off the shelf, quickly connect things together in your CAD program of choice, put a bunch of headers on board, and then just, instead of wiring things point to point now, it's literally faster and cheaper to just do it in a repeatable way using a 2-layer, 4-layer PCB. And I just think that that's changed a lot of things, obviously very specific to the electrical side of things, but that is... that has changed the cost basis, I think, for even assembly and modularity and a lot of things. I don't know if you've both seen that.
I haven't seen the video, but I understand where you're going because things have changed so much. It used to be you couldn't. Dev boards cost $10,000.
Yeah, right.
And
yep.
you never bought them. You were only given them by the reps for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
And you couldn't get an accelerometer board just to try it out. And now you just go to SparkFun and there's all this stuff.
Couple bucks.
I was kind of appalled to find out that some of the dev boards, like the Nucleo ones from ST, you're not supposed to OEM them. So if you want to build something with that as a core, you're supposed to make your own board. I was a little disappointed.
Yeah, but some of those things are huge, right?
Yeah, except I was doing something that was, we only needed about 20 of them, and it wasn't size constrained, and it was kind of like what you were saying. It was Lego blocks put together for a fairly works like prototype.
Oh, okay.
And yet I was like, this isn't right. We shouldn't do 20 because they're saying we shouldn't do this. But on the other hand, making our own board to do exactly this is dumb.
I wonder why they do that. I mean, I doubt they're taking huge losses on dev boards.
I think because dev board quality control is not as important as OEM quality control. If your dev board doesn't work, you just get frustrated. If your product doesn't work, you
yeah, but
go
I mean,
after them.
they don't not going to give you any warranty, or they can just say this is not warranted if you use it. I don't know.
But yeah,
I think it's just I think the margins are definitely lower, and they don't want it to extract stuff out of the supply chain either, right? So if you think about, well, we're going to make 5,000 dev boards this year, and because we expect the demand to be 5,000, but then one user, for some reason, the cost basis, even if they're making money on it, whatever, right? But then the cost basis is good enough that they're like, oh, well, we're just going to design 4,000 of these into our product, and then they go and buy out the supply chain.
Oh, sure.
Then their part's not in the hand of what they expected to be 5,000 engineers, or on the shelves of 5,000 engineers, as the reality usually is, or maybe the shelves of 2,000 engineers. The idea being that I think it's just because it's a marketing vehicle, they don't want it to be part of a product.
that makes sense. I mean, you do give your dev boards a lower profit margin than your production boards.
And I'm sure it's like internally too, I'm sure that it's charged as a marketing expense versus a development expense regardless. So they don't want it to be like, well, our design division is, doing $2 million a year in boards. Obviously, this is ridiculous. And our marketing department is doing $20 million a year in boards. But in theory, that could get skewed in a certain way,
So going back to prototyping faster. So one of the things you were talking about was that's changed in the industry. That was one of the things you talked about last year as a resolution, was learning to
As a
prototype
goal,
faster.
yeah. Yeah.
Are those related?
They're not related, actually. That was actually brought, you had written that on the list after the fact. But I think that just doing consulting and such is actually kind of just knocked me into that mode of like, well, I don't have time. I have to kind of glue this stuff together. But like as an example, I did a project a couple months ago where I didn't have time to spin up an entire new board, but I took a dev board off the shelf. I made a sensor board that was custom for my application. There was a standard pinout on the dev board. I just hooked into that. I had a screen that hooked into that, and then I 3D printed I 3D modeled a case around it. And at the end, it was a thing that had a screen. It did sensing. It had RF on board. Like all of these things were something that it was basically a proof of concept. But at the end of the day, it was a thing that I needed to get done and out the door. It was probably, I don't know, 10, 20 times what it would cost in a final version of it. But it worked out great for what I was talking about. So in that case, like I think the PCB cost $2 to make, I think and then the prototyping, I get to 3D print prototypes at my workspace for like the cost of materials, which is amazing. And so like really it's just the need to quickly turn things around kind of drove me towards doing faster prototyping, and then the cost of materials makes it kind of a no-brainer at that point.
The cost of materials. I'm glad you brought that up, because it used to be when you made 1 or 10 of things, the cost of the materials was as much as the cost of the NRE. But now the cost of material is so cheap, and NREs is still expensive. So yeah,
it's kind of tough, because it's like, well, and like, so we were talking about consulting. It's like, yeah, that thing's going to cost, $100 to make, but it's going to cost you $5,000 for all of my time to get it to the point of working. And I think someone looks at that as a customer and they're like, really? And it's like, at the end of the day, the thing still costs $5,100, right? But they say, well, it only costs $100 in materials. Well, okay, that's a pile of atoms until someone puts them all together. So what are you going to do about it? It's just it's a tough from a sales standpoint, I think.
Well, the good news is the second one also costs $100.
That's true. Yeah, right. You're amortizing $5,000 each time you build another one, I guess. What are some skills that both of you trying to learn?
I've been on this robotics and AI kick. I'm still on it. And
how's it going?
I am fortunate enough that I did a bunch of work on it on my own because I had some free time, and then suddenly I had a contract that was using every single bit of it.
Wow.
From robot operating system to image processing to deep neural networks. And it was really strange to fall into this project that I had. It was like my hobby became my job, but in a good way.
Yeah, usually that's not said with the positive spin on it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like I was doing ceramics and I tried to make that my job. It was always related to my job. But getting to work on large autonomous robots is pretty cool. I didn't expect that to pay off so soon.
Was that because you talked about it as you were going along? Is that how you found the gig?
I think that the person who recommended me is someone I know in real life or knew before, have known many years. And maybe he knew I was working on it because of the show, or maybe he just recommended me. And I talked to the guy who was looking for the person, and I guess maybe I answered all the questions right. It's like feeling out.
Yeah.
Well, do
checked
you
all the
think
boxes.
this processor will work? And I'm like, well, let's talk about this. We want to do this and this and this, and here are the risks, and here's how we'll figure it out, and here's how. And so I think I just, the connection was made, and because I had been thinking about that and working on it, the connection went forward. So yeah, I don't know if it was show related. He definitely didn't know about my typing robot before we had the full conversation.
You're like, I'm typing you right now on a robot. You didn't even know.
My dirty little secret is I have not been an embedded developer since October.
It's only a few months.
Yes, I am learning iOS.
You gonna change the name of the show or what?
My job now is iOS developer. So I'm working on iOS application code and learning Swift and Objective-C and all that good Apple-y stuff or bad Apple-y stuff.
When are you going to make a game that makes us millions?
Never.
Yeah, right? Does that still happen? Do app developers still make like buckets of money like they did at the beginning?
It's pretty damn rare.
It's winning the lottery.
Really rare unless you've got something really special. You know, it's the whole viral thing, right? I have a viral app now. Or if but there's a lot of money being spent on development. So to do something that competes well, you have to have a real company. It's just become a normal software industry.
Yeah, it's a gig now. Yeah, right. Okay, it's a marketplace, whatever.
Average price is super low, so that's an additional problem. But yeah, I've been learning a ton of new codes, a new language, new frameworks, new methodologies. Well, sort of new. I mean, things I knew about but wasn't proficient in at all. It's way different. It's so different. It's almost the difference between sometimes what I think electrical engineering and software is. But just going to because there's a lot you can do with very little code, but knowing what the very little code is a huge challenge, and reading it back is a huge challenge. Like one line of code can be this huge expressive thing that, you know, goes through your entire array of things, and they could be random things, and it does something to all of them, and it does them on different processors, and then it all comes back in an asynchronous something. And that can be one line of code, whereas in C, you'd be spending days coming up with just
stepping through
the infrastructure to make that happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to read that, that's the challenge of learning is okay, here's some sample code, or here's some code from the application I'm working on. It's like, what? Okay, I need to spend a half an hour reading this line of code because I don't quite get it all.
Yeah.
And for someone who's been doing software for forever, it's kind of demoralizing at times. It's like, wait a minute, I know this. This is code, but no.
How are the people that you're interacting with? Like are you working with people that are coming into Swift as like new developers who don't have that background, and they're just like, oh yeah, this is just the way it is, so they get it? Or are they also staring at that one line of code?
It's a mix. So my team is mostly new developers who are at the same stage as I am, and then there's an existing team that's been doing it for a while. Swift isn't that old, so it's
you need 20 years of experience.
Yeah, I think it's maybe 5 years, something like that. 5 years old officially or something. But it's also changed really fast. Like they had major revisions every year since it came out, and they're starting to slow down on what those major revisions do. But for a while, it was like, okay, the next language revision breaks all your code.
Oh wow!
So
Okay,
you have to rewrite substantial portions of your code because we changed language so much. So everyone's kind of learning, and everyone has a different kind of opinion of how idiosyncratic to be. So
yeah,
you can do some really exciting things with very few lines of code and make it unreadable, or you can write readable code, and they probably compiled with the same thing, but then you're not using all the cool stuff, right? So so I get code review comments, and you're like, oh, you should rewrite this as this. And I'm like, okay. And I rewrite it as that. And then I commit it. And then somebody says, oh, you should rewrite it back to the thing you had before. I'm like, hey, you two get in a room and work this out, because I don't care.
I'm going to put a couple baseball bats in there. Whoever comes out winning, that's who I'm going to pick. Yeah.
But it's been interesting, and I've been happy to have the opportunity to learn something basically completely new to me, as, in a full-time job.
Yeah, it's like getting paid to learn, pretty much. That's great.
Yeah. Full-time. I mean, that's one of the advantages with megacorp.com.
Unfortunately, our team has been noticed, and people are like, oh, we need this feature, and they're putting stuff on us, and now we have some pressure. It's like, well,
oh my God, you have to work now?
We aren't the experts, but we'll try.
Yep. Yeah, I've been playing around with CircuitPython. I don't know if you guys have played with that at all. That's the Adafruit version of MicroPython, specific to the SAMD 2151 chipsets, and now NRF 52.
It's a good system. Yeah. I mean, I understood about MicroPython, and then started looking at the Ada stuff, and you can get a lot done with that.
Yeah, you can. what Chris was just talking about with like looking at lines of code and be like, I'm, I'm like, I'm a bit Python challenged, and I've been struggling especially like because I'm basically even still just modifying someone else's drivers, and some of the things I'm looking at, it's just basically looking at object-oriented stuff that I'd feel like I just got a better handle on C, and not even that good. And now it's like, oh, okay, there's all this other stuff now. So it's there's a lot of unbilled hours there.
Object-oriented is super hard transition, because you can look at a program and not be able to see at all how things flow. It's like, right. Okay, there's all these stuff side by side, and where does it start? And once it's started, right. Where does it go? And it's very hard to analyze statically a piece of code that's really object oriented. Whereas with C, it's like, okay, we start here, it calls this, and I can map out the flow pretty easily.
Started 0, 0, 0, 0, whatever the memory location is, and go from there, right? And it's challenging. I don't know. So hopefully that'll get better over the years. I don't know how much of that will. I don't know how much like Python, like all the way down to the low level stuff. Like there is a lot of stuff in there, in between, and like so I can even see. So this was like I was doing writes to a chip, and I can like very easily see how much slower the writes are to the chip. And, it's so I agree it's much easier to do things, but I think it's like there's going to be a lot of tinkering with now instead of just doing single writes. I'll need to do like bulk writes and bulk reads, and basically at the end of the day, I'm not sure how much more optimized it will be. Not even optimized. The flexibility versus the optimization, I'm not sure how much that's going to matter.
Whether or not you're building a prototype or a maker thing versus a product that has to be optimal and cheap, fast and reliable. Yeah, I have been seeing a lot of that. I mean, there's just this divide between let's make it and then let's make it robust. And I don't feel like we're addressing that well enough, because it has gotten so easy to get to the point of let's make it. Yeah,
totally. And you talked about that with the prototype author, right?
Yeah, Alan Cohen, prototype to production, or maybe prototype to product. I keep getting it wrong. But that was a good book about how to the immense number and quantity of the steps to go from here I made it work once to here I'm shipping 1 million of them.
Oh yeah. I've definitely I've told this story I think before in the Amp Hour before, and maybe even when I've been on your show, but like at one of my past jobs we had like this 3D model. It was beautifully like industrial designed, and we got it like cut out of like a solid block of ABS in China, and like just really, really gorgeous looking prototype. It was exactly like the drawings. You held it in your hand. You're like, oh man, it's done. And so my boss showed it to like one of the VPs. He's like, this is great. We'll take 25,000. He's like, that's a prototype. No, we can't do that. But it looks so real that it like that to the untrained eye, they think it's done. They think it came from a mold, and it's like, no, we're gonna need another 6 months. It's like that's just to get the money to do the thing that's gonna take 6 months.
And software's the same way. And CircuitPython is that shiny, pretty prototype.
Well, there's always been this divide though in software. Visual Basic was always a thing that professional developers sneered at, and people making products with Excel macros, and there's always been
I've been in that train.
Oh, me too.
The easy path that people wrote stuff in, and you'd come into a job and it's like, well, here's our whole product. It's in QBasic, and it's really slow. We don't know why. So I don't think that's ever going to change, because there's always going to be more accessible languages that you take a hit in performance at the cost of, at the benefit of being able to develop.
And I think we've talked about it on the show before too, either a show we've done together or even just talking other times, like the idea of like people come into the world with an Arduino thing, it's like, yeah, that works actually really great. And then you're going to hit a wall at some point. It's like, how soon until the wall, until you hit that wall. And when you do, then you have to start from scratch. And that's when you start seeing Kickstarter problems and workarounds and weirdness and not great products, right? They're not long-term products.
Yeah.
So
I have a question from our embedded Slack channel.
Mm-hmm.
Is ESP32 just a fad?
It
seems topical to this.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that they're coming out with a new product soon, Espressif is. So in terms of, is the ESP32 as a standalone chip a fad? Well, I still haven't seen many production level devices with it. Maybe it's out there more than I know. But the cheapness really, it's kind of like the PCB thing we were talking about. The cheapness really changes the equation a lot. And when you really look at what's in there, you get a dual core with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and a crap ton of peripherals. And it's like for $4 in a certified FCC certified module. It's like, okay, well, when something cheaper comes along or better, or, that actually has a sleep mode, comes along, then yes, that'll usurp it. But I think until then, it's like, I think people are going to keep making stuff with it. And I think that the development community that comes up around it will keep it going, because that's what got a lot of it started in the first place. Did I answer that question at all?
Yeah. I don't know how many products are made with the ESP8266, the older version. I felt like it came on the market and everybody loved it, including me. But then when I tried to think about how would I put this in a product, I was like, this isn't secure. This isn't as configurable as I need it to be. This isn't the one. And I was hoping the ESP32 would be closer, but I felt like it wasn't yet. And I'm hoping they come out with something that's a little bit more robust, to use that word again.
Definitely targets more consumery, low-cost markets in the first place. I'm interested just because I like cheap stuff, especially when it's over-spec'd and cheap. But I think there will be a place for chips like that for a long time. So I don't think that's a fad. And I think that people will keep chasing low-cost components because of how that ends up stacking up costs over time. So I don't think that low-cost Wi-Fi connectivity is going anywhere.
Not going away.
What do you think?
Not for sure.
Yeah.
Oh no, I agree.
Right. I mean, or even trading off for a less secure, less well-documented, less everything else kind of solution. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. But I don't know. Maybe you have other ideas.
No, I think that'll continue until it becomes too painful to do that.
You mean security-wise?
Yeah.
Yeah, security. Come on.
There's going to be companies that are going to ride that wave of this is cheap and I can get something out there. And then there's going to be other companies that are like, we need support and we need documentation and we need certification and we need to be able to understand this chip before we're going to integrate it. And there's multiple kinds of companies out there. So I think there's definitely a market for integrating the cheap, the super cheap stuff that the expensive, some things you might not want to be expensed. But I mean,
yeah, I wonder if people will like not mistakenly, but like if someone gives it a shot and puts it out there and then just happens to be a breakout success product, like that's very possible. And that might also lead to those security risks like you're talking about. But at the end of the day, that will mean that it's even more proliferation. More people might be willing to give that a try as like a production level thing. So I think if you really get into the high volume stuff, people are willing to say, well, let's just start from the beginning because we'll get better pricing from a TI or a Broadcom or whoever, But yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it's still fun to play with. So that's enough to keep things going. The thing that I'm surprised about though is that why isn't there a better way to hook into Wi-Fi networks still?
Provisioning. The process of putting in your Wi-Fi name and password, the provisioning piece, it still sucks. It's always going to suck. It just sucks. I hate it. Yeah. I've hated it for more than 10 years and it hasn't really changed.
No, it has. Yeah. If I hold my phone to my brother's phone, it says, would you like to send your Wi-Fi credentials? And you push the button and it goes. Yeah.
Because he's in your contact list.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. No, that was cute. I saw you
And
do
there
that.
are other ways to do it now if you've got Bluetooth as well.
I think that's one of the reasons the ESP32 has both.
So that can
yeah.
be easier if you've got your phone with an app and then your device, and then it connects over Bluetooth, and then they negotiate, and then it sends over the credentials. That could be easier, but I don't think there's going to be any kind of Wi-Fi IEEE protocol improvements because I'm not sure it's really solvable, because anything you try to do to solve it probably introduces
Is a security hole. Yeah, right.
The button you push on your router.
Yeah.
That didn't last.
That was the
Yeah, that didn't. Yeah. I was actually asking about. So I've been thinking about this for some product ideas I have, but I really care about it because, like, when you really start thinking, if you get all the BS terms out of the way, the IoTs, the smart homes, the whatever, right? At the end of the day, it is useful to have a thing on Wi-Fi, and it is useful to like be able to manage a big bulk amount of them. And so I started looking around, like, all right, so if I was going to design something in with an ESP32, if I was going to take that plunge, how do I then go and update firmware on all of them? How do I manage all of them? How do I make sure all the data is coming back, assuming I'm in control of this fleet of gadgets? And I don't know if you saw that Twitter thread, but I was asking about it on Twitter just because I haven't seen all that much about it, and I've got a couple irons in the fire. But have you seen how to do that?
Yeah. So there's people, there's companies that do that for a living. So Electric Imp, that was their whole deal. Even though they sold devices, it was the management of the devices in the back end. Particle does the same thing. Or
But those are
slightly
both
the same thing.
platforms.
They're both platforms.
They both want to sell you the hardware
Right.
in order to make you pay for the
Exactly.
software.
Microsoft
That's
Azure.
the key.
I think Microsoft Azure has a whole IoT management platform, not hardware, but they're on their servers and things. I think this stuff exists.
AWS IoT.
Yeah.
I think we have another question on here somewhere. Is what do you think is coming in 2019, and what do you think is overhyped? And those two, I was thinking IoT management. It is overhyped, poorly implemented,
And underhyped.
and it's going to be very important, but there is no solution that looks like it's going to win. I mean,
There shouldn't be a solution that wins.
but there should be
It's not
a pattern.
It's not a protocol thing. It's not. Nobody's going to have a internet RFC for IoT management.
I don't need
it's
it
going
to
be several
win. I don't need it
companies
to win
with-
the whole market. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just need it to win I just need a solution. I need something to buy, honestly. Like, I need, like,
yeah.
I need
maybe
to
3 to
pay
choose
50
from.
grand and 3 to choose from. That's fine. But I still actually haven't seen that. I found a couple things, but I was curious if you had seen them otherwise. Because, like, so you had mentioned Particle and Electric Imp. Both of those require that you buy their hardware.
Yeah.
And so they're running custom firmware on like the P0, P1 from Particle, which is, a great solution for some people, and they got their new stuff too, which looks cool. It's it's a bespoke piece of hardware that runs bootloader firmware and has like a wrapper thing, and then you write firmware that runs within that wrapper, I think. That's as far as I understand it. And then you pay a platform fee for each device and however much data you send, and that including for Wi-Fi, and then you have to buy the hardware for them. Cool, fine. That's like a very specific solution. I think a lot of people like that. I was talking like, okay, now I want to design with just an arbitrary piece of hardware, specifically in this case, the ESP32. Is there a way to get an arbitrary piece of hardware, that has maybe some starter code and then has that wrapper for firmware updating, OTA type stuff. And then on the website, then it's like, okay, well, now you have 30 devices in the field. Here's all the names you gave them. And now you want to push firmware updates to 20 of them? Okay, click go, and it tells you which ones work.
I think you need to look at Azure.
Ubidots was doing some of that.
What?
Ubidots.
Ubidots, you said?
I don't know.
Okay.
Microsoft Azure has IoT Hub, is what they call it. I think AWS has something similar.
AWS has IoT.
I don't know what the costs are. So IoT Hub
so that's what
a lot.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of them are a lot. There's a homebrew one that's, I think, called homeautomation.io or something along those lines.
Okay.
It does seem like the sort of thing you should be able to spin up on an AWS instance for your...
Well, and there was a SparkFun thing that was doing that they abandoned. Was it Rhino or something?
Don't remember.
So the things that I found so far are, one is the Amazon's version of FreeRTOS that was, I think you guys talked about, and I also talked about on Amp Hour. I didn't quite understand it, but that actually is one thing that they're talking about. So it's actually compiled for ESP32, and it can handle some of that stuff. Like, so like ESP32 has an OTA bootloader, whatever's internally, and then Amazon wrote it so that basically it can handle that. You know, I receive a new chunk of firmware, I'm running my old firmware, I try to swap them out and do all that stuff. So that's part of what that is. And then I think on their cloud side, they can do it. And then the other one was Andreas Spiess, one of the YouTubers. Him and his business partner started up a new one too. I'm trying to find the name of it, but I am failing miserably on that side of things. But
This is what show notes are for.
Yeah. So there is another one, and it's not professional. It's like there's no professional pricing plan yet, but they're working on that kind of thing. Something maybe in the new year.
This is going to be one of those areas that I think next year we will see a lot of shuffling, but we won't see any resolution
Answers.
for 2 or 3 years.
Or we'll see the IoT bubble collapse.
Oh, please. No, because then I wouldn't have a job. Wait, no. None of my jobs depend on that.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, it's very fuzzy, and I think there's money to be made, but you are dealing with lots of people who don't really want to pay anything.
Or it's every company that does this that needs it spins up their own thing.
I don't think that's going to continue to happen. It's just too hard.
I mean,
when you're managing 30, it's fine, but when you're managing 300, you need somebody to have thought of all
when
the
you're
problems.
managing $1 billion or $1 million, you don't want Microsoft doing it.
I don't know if Google has a manager. I mean, we said
I don't know.
Amazon and we said Microsoft, so I feel like there must be a Google one just because.
The great balance point of the FANG world.
Google Cloud IoT, fully managed IoT services. Try it for free. Yeah, everybody's got this.
Yeah.
Use cases.
I think the tough thing is that in either case, you need to have some kind of hooks in the firmware, right? You need to be able to have something that is actually modifying the firmware, and then, or like self-modifying
For firmware update.
Yeah, exactly. And then there needs to be a cloud component piece. So like, I don't feel like I'm capable of writing the cloud component piece, even if I was able to write the OTA piece. It's like a lot of things in that stack that end up being a hassle.
Well, and you're focused on updating the firmware, but most of these also need status and verifying things are awake occasionally while still sleeping, or taking small amounts of data.
90% of it is I have an app for my thing, like your weather station in your house, and I want to see what the temperature is at my house.
Yeah,
And
there's some piece of data.
it goes to the server and says, well, the IoT thing checked in 20 minutes ago, and here's the temperature.
Yeah.
So
But that's
a
like
big piece too.
that's a very webby thing. It feels to me like a lot of.
Well, it's all
so
webby
if
at some point. It's all
Yeah.
HTML endpoints, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean that so an Azure team could spin that up without knowing anything about the hardware. They're making a door, and then a device gets itself onto a network, goes and knocks on the door, and it says, "Hey, I have a key, and I can get through that door and dump my data in there." That's what they really want to do because it's super low. It's very hands off. I think the other problem is that like when now you're going the other direction, you're saying, well, now I have a door, and I'm going through the door, and I'm now going down to your device, and I'm dropping a package. It's like the Amazon Ring, or what was that called? The Amazon thing where they're going to drop packages off in your house. It's more like that, and nobody liked that idea.
Well, when we go back to security, you mentioned the the NRF 52. They have a pretty good, pretty secure method of firmware update, except for the fact it's Bluetooth. But their methodology is very reasonable. And yet, the last time I did one of those, every device was keyed differently because that's the smart security way to do it. And how am I going to update all of them with different keys?
No, I mean, we're going to get into details
Well, yeah,
how to
this is
implement
all-
this, but I mean, you do it with certs, and you have, public-private key relationship for the site that has the firmware update and that delivers it, and the device is the thing that should be authenticating it at that point in that direction. You want to authenticate to the cloud when you have a device attaching, but you don't need to have a separate key to get firmware updates. But if you need to change every key, is that what you were saying? Because
Every device had its own key.
then you just burn them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You come out with version 2.
It's a very complicated problem, and it requires quite a bit of intelligence on the device. And so to make the devices more manageable, they are more expensive.
And then that's why you write in Python.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, on one of the projects I was working on, we were doing a Python thing, and it was way easier to do that kind of stuff. So I can at least, I wasn't actually doing the Python writing, but I was working with the person doing the Python writing. Way easier. But I think it's also like understanding the stacks of how that stuff works. Like I don't know. I'm starting to learn more about the key system and certificates like you're talking about. And I think until you learn that that's even a thing, it's difficult to know where to look next.
Right. And it's super easy to make a mistake with that stuff is the other problem. That's one of those areas where if you don't understand it completely, you can just subtly mess it up and have a big problem.
Yep. And if you understood it completely last year, it's already changed.
And if you understand it completely, you're a security engineer and you're not doing what you're doing.
Okay, so aside from that, do either of you have any wild speculations for 2019? New tech, new methods?
I don't see anything super exciting with new tech besides what we already know. I'm kind of a downer on next year.
Get off my lawn.
I was a downer on this year too, so
I think somebody will do a cross-country self-driving car trip.
That'd be cool.
I
guess the high-level stuff. I look at like those high-level things like self-driving cars too, and it's so far from anything I'm doing that I don't have any. Yeah.
Well, it's not super far from what Elise is doing. So.
Oh, okay.
Giant autonomous robots. Sorry.
But yeah, just in terms of processors and stuff, I mean, everything's going to proceed as it has been. There'll be some new cores that do something slightly better.
Christopher's barely managing not to take his finger in a circle and do the big whoop sign.
I don't know. I mean, a lot of what
my favorite version of that is when in Little Rascals when the kid that plays Buckwheat goes Whoopi, and then his mom's played by Whoopi Goldberg. Classic, just classic.
Yeah, I don't
catch that. Sorry.
I feel like everything that's exciting now is just the culmination of the last 20 years. And the internet was really cool in 1995, and now it's on everything. So what does that mean? Well, it's on everything. I mean, the protocols are the same. I'm just jaded. Yeah, I think. I think there's going to be some absolutely stunning security holes found in every processor architecture. like this year with the meltdown stuff, Inspector was just the beginning, and it's going to get much worse. How's that for positive?
Thanks.
Chaos Communication Camp is going on in 4 days. Congress. Chaos Communication Congress is going on in 4 days. And I know one of our past guests, Dmitry Netaspazov and Josh Datko, who was just on our show, they're basically talking about holes in crypto wallets. And
God. Well, at least they're not worth very much anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That helps a lot, I guess. But the wallet.fail is the site that they've basically done marketing for a talk that they're going to do. So wallet.fail is the site to check out if you're interested. It's gonna be very fun.
All right. How about you two? Any wild speculations? Positive, maybe.
I have
Alicia, you go first.
Okay.
Yeah, please go first.
So Christopher showed me this little robot. There was a desk robot.
Oh, the Anki.
Anki?
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
From Anki.
With the little the front loader shovel thingy, and it
is
emotive.
It's called Vector.
Vector, yeah, it was called Vector, and it was something Echo or Google Voice like.
It had the word Echo,
and it could go to the internet and it could respond to voice commands, and it had this adorable emotive affect about it.
Yeah.
And so my prediction for 2019 is that we are going to see an explosion of adorable robots that act as assistants. And they're not going to be very functional, but they are going to be darned cute.
Where did I just see this? I just read an article that somebody was lamenting that the what was it called in Hitchhiker's Guide, where every single thing had a personality? It was
like the doors, the personality doors.
Yeah. Somebody was lamenting, this is what's going to happen. Everything's going to have a personality.
And I think that's true. I mean, I think your water pitcher is going to be cute and have a personality, and have when it's empty, it's going to be sad, and when it needs its filter changed, it's going to look, I don't know, constipated. It's
Genuine people personalities. That's what it was called.
That's right. GPP. Yeah, that's right.
I think that's coming. And I think that the Internet of Things and the prevalence of enough processing power to make basic neural networks work on this sort of thing is going to just kill us with kawaii style cuteness. That is my prediction for 2019. Everything is going to blink at you with giant eyelashes.
I think that Facebook is going to be broken up.
Oh, I hope so. Well, yeah.
That's you said for wild predictions, there's a wild prediction.
That's a wild prediction.
Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I don't have much. I'm still, like I've talked about on the Amp Hour, I'm still pretty excited about LoRaWAN. I know that that's like very in the dirt kind of like protocol level versus higher level like robot emotiveness, but emotivity.
I just wanted you to explain LoRaWAN. I mean, I think we've talked about it, but never for more than a minute. So could you give the 2-minute version?
Oh, sure. Okay, so I got this real confused at the beginning. LoRa it's long range or low power radio or something like that. It doesn't matter. It's basically how the chip talks to other chips. That's the easy way to think about it. LoRaWAN is then a protocol layer that's on top of that basically it works kind of like the internet. So now a device is in the middle of a field and it's saying my temperature is 4 because I live in Chicago. And
for what?
4C, sorry, 4C. Or F. Yeah, that's coming too. It's tough, guys. I might come visit, I have to say. So the device is sitting in the middle of the field. It's saying my temperature's 4, and then there's a bunch of listening devices that are called gateways, and basically it receives all of them receive the packet. You know, maybe there's 3 in the area, and they all receive that the thing is 4, and then also there's like stuff in the header that says where that packet should end up going, and basically it's certified to be on the gateway, and then the gateway says, oh, I know where to send this, and it sends it back to like a application server that then the application server receives from 3 different gateway servers. Hey, you know, node 23 out in the field just said its temperature's 4. It gets that 3 times. It says, okay, I get that it's, you know, that I definitely got this packet, and now I'm going to hand that over to the AWS IoT or whatever your graphing, charting, interfacing system is. So the idea is there's like software layers on top of the protocol layer, both of which are interesting, but it's stupid that they gave them the same name. So
but it's very, very low power and very, very low
long
information
distance.
And long distance.
Yeah. So it's like 600 bytes per second, or bits per second rather, in the lowest power mode, and you might do it once every hour or day. But you can have a thing that runs for 10 years on a battery. So that's kind of cool. So I'm personally very excited about it. I think that's super cool. I'm going to be doing more LoRa stuff for professional. I've already done a couple of professional projects. I'm doing a personal project right now, and I'm very excited about it. But I don't know what that means for other things. But I think that's a winner in my mind. There's definitely a lot of, just like anything else, a lot of security questions there too.
Do you have to pay for your bytes to go over?
If you use the Things Network, it's an open source. That's that conference I went to last year in February in the Amsterdam that's coming up again. And that is an open source implementation. It's basically like a shared network of network nodes where everybody processes packets that are allowed to be on the Things Network. And you do not have to pay for that. Comcast right now is spinning out basically every cable box in the nation will have LoRaWAN receiving capabilities. And so you'll have to pay to be on that. But at the same time, you'll have, imagine now every cable box in every suburban household that Comcast is in, which is a lot, basically will have these chipsets in there, and then it'll hand it right back to the network.
Weird.
Yes and no.
What band is that on?
In the States, it's 433 and 915, both ISM band.
Okay.
In Europe, it's 868, and in Australia, it's 902. So
Well, it's nice you can use the same radio for all of them. Not.
you can't. You
Right.
cannot. Oh, okay, you got that. But a lot of the chipsets switch over. You basically it's just a configuration bit.
Yeah.
So like the stuff in the so there's a SX1276 is one of the Semtech chipsets, and that's is it 76? I don't know. Whatever. One of the Semtech chips. Basically, you just set a register and you go, and it's basically swaps between 868 and 915 real easy. So that's nice, and the antenna's kind of close. So I'm excited about that personally, but I don't know, like who knows how it's gonna work out. I just think that a lot of the times people are gonna think that they're gonna do a lot more than they actually can do with that on
Right.
really low battery power. And it is like bidirectional too, so you could push firmware back down and do a bunch of other stuff, but
I don't think you could push firmware down. It's too slow.
you would have to do it in chunks. So like
Over a
basically
year.
there was a yeah, right. There was a ARM embed is just they just verified that was on our subreddit. They just verified that they could push firmware back down, and it does it in packets, and there's a CRC and all that other stuff. It would take a long time though. So I'm excited about it. I talk about it a lot, I guess. Sorry.
No, it's cool. We don't talk about it that much, but it is something I've been keeping my eye on. So I'm happy to have you bring it up.
I can't get past like, what application stuff? Well, I could have a billion sensors thrown through a wilderness reporting on.
Yeah, that's actually what
fires or
I think about. Is
something,
like, yeah, you basically have imagine like so. And one of the personal project I'm thinking about working on is like basically having an enclosed, waterproof, battery powered thing, right? And then you imagine it like is like enclosed in like a rubber ball, effectively.
Yeah.
And this is not going to sound good. It's going to sound actually very bad for the environment. But imagine you'd have a handful of these and you just chuck them, and then they all talk back to a node. Now, granted, they would stay there and you have to go pick them up or whatever. But like, the idea is that like chuckable sensors. That's kind of the idea, and I think that could help for environmental stuff, and hopefully you pick them up when you're done.
Stick them on whales.
Stick them on whales.
Yeah.
Always a fan of sensors. You can just throw it a whale.
Yeah. You have to still find them, I guess, and get close enough, but then you're good. What was your favorite gadget of the year? Did you have favorite gadgets?
My favorite gadget was something I got off of Chris's wish list for Christmas last year. And it has nearly no electronics and the worst beeping sound I have ever heard.
Oh, was the Annoyotron?
It's an egg cooker.
It's a hard-boiled egg cooker. It's my favorite gadget. Yeah, it's so embarrassing, but that's the one.
But it does sound like a fire alarm when it's done.
Yeah. Are you going to choose a synth or something actually reasonable, Christopher?
I mean, I think I have to.
Yeah, given
Although I'm not sure which one. I only got two synths this year. Two. Only two. One isn't even really a synth. It's a sampler.
That's not bad. I mean, like, that's not bad.
Yeah. And one of them I just got a few days ago, so I barely made it.
No, I'm pretty sure that more electronics.
Oh, electronics have arrived, not synthesizers.
This is one of those things where you tell me that something's a drum machine versus a synthesizer versus a MIDI player versus a.
No, I only got the Octatrack and the DeepMind.
They're all the same to her, Chris. Come on, man.
I know they're all
just,
the same.
They're
but
just
I'm
blips
counting.
and bleeps
This
and
is just
blurbs.
counting.
Exactly. Thank you,
This
Chris.
counts. That's fine.
Get yourself a friggin' acoustic piano for the love of God, you know. Then you
want
can't
an
use
acoustic piano.
headphones.
I've had one. They take up a lot of space.
They
They
do.
require
They do.
weird people to come into your house and fix them periodically. Not weird people.
It's one of my life goals is
Fascinating people.
to have a grand piano at some point. That's a life goal of mine. We'll see.
What was your favorite gadget, Chris?
Personal one. Just got a Roomba. So that was fun. It's interesting interacting with that thing. Obviously not new to me, not new to the world.
What did you name it?
Jim.
Oh, Jim?
Yeah.
I
Actually, I
find
didn't
ours
name it.
clean.
My girlfriend did, and she was really upset that all of the voice assistants are all named females and that you're bossing females around. And I agreed with that. And she's like, you know what? We're gonna boss Jim around. And I was like, all right. And also, when he gets stuck on something, we're gonna say, he's dead, Jim.
Or Jim's dead. No, it doesn't
Yeah,
work.
whatever.
I did
Either
find
way.
that our Roomba works quite a bit better now that it has Google eyes on it. So just
Oh,
a
okay.
tip there.
I will definitely be doing that. I might take a pause here and order some on Amazon.
Okay, let's see. What else do we have on our list?
Tons.
Yeah, we have a lot because we asked the embedded Slack people, and that's our Patreon reward is you get to be on the Slack channel where sometimes we show up and talk and it's really useful, and sometimes we don't really show up and people talk and it's really useful, and it's
You just let it run itself.
yeah,
Yeah, it's nice.
it is.
I'm there. I like
is
it.
Nice.
Too many Slacks though. How do we
There's so
improve
many Slacks.
telepresence? And I don't know. Slacks are just
Yeah, I'm adding it. I'm adding one soon.
they're too much sometimes.
Everyone's getting rid of HipChat. HipChat's being discontinued, so a lot of companies are going to Slack.
Oh boy,
There'll be more Slacks.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I think telepresence can only be improved by those robots on a stick that you drive around.
No, those are creepy.
Those are so creepy.
I just put that
You
in
know,
there
there was a line in Snow Crash. You ever read Snow Crash?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one engineer, she's talking about like her big thing was she basically added eyes to the avatars that are in the system, and like that was like the thing that made the whole system. And I think that's it. I think that like having, we're talking about emotive robots, how about emotive telepresence, whatever, right? But being able to there was someone talking about it recently on a podcast. They were talking about like being able to see when someone's eyes are dilating or when you're like mirroring movements, you know, like all of the things that are like very, very human, you cannot do when you're telepresence. You know, it's just like you're just a floating head. And if you don't have that like detail of like human connection, then you're never going to figure it out otherwise. So we need to make emotive robots that actually mirror my face. That's what I'm trying to say.
It's a vast uncanny valley to cross there, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Mirror your face. That would be weird.
It's true. If you are an introvert or on the spectrum or just face blind, and you are one of the people who have trouble connecting with someone, mirroring like their head tilt and how they're doing their hands and their shoulder tilt, and occasionally making eye contact. These make other people a lot more comfortable, even though if you're like me, it makes you much less comfortable.
Well, it's comfortable until you notice it, and then you're like, oh, why you do this?
I mean, yeah. But most people actually don't notice.
Yeah,
strategies for meeting me. But it's very effective. I mean, if you're really socially inept, practicing on the baristas as you get coffee is quite good practice.
So step 1, make a robot. Step 2, take it to Starbucks. Step 3, we'll find out.
How many coffees can a robot drink?
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's see. We should go into some of these sillier things.
And speaking of silly things, I gave up caffeine. That's something I'm trying, and it's very weird. I still drink a lot of coffee, but it's all decaf.
Well, then you haven't given up caffeine. There's still caffeine in decaf.
Not a lot. Don't take away his
My
decaf.
metabolism says there's still caffeine in decaf.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, if you're really, really sensitive to it, then yeah.
I can get too much caffeine by sitting next to someone who has an espresso.
Oh, got it.
How's that go? Are you finding that you're sluggish?
No. I mean, after
Less
the
anxious?
initial thing, I'm definitely less anxious. Like I haven't had heart palpitations in like weeks. So yeah, it's good. You know, it's one of those things where I just wanted to break free of it, and I think I am. Minus I still like coffee.
Well, yes, because coffee is excellent. You've made a lot of changes in the last year.
Yeah.
You were already in Chicago a year ago, but you were just still you were only barely settled.
Last year I had been there for a year, so I moved there to August of 2016. So it's been two and a bit now, 2 1/3. But yeah, lots of changes. It's good. You know, got to keep moving.
No, you can just sit still. It's nice. You should try it.
Okay.
You're kidding. Chris has already been to our house. He knows how much we just lay around.
You guys walk to the
cats.
beach and listen to the whale sounds, and it's a good life out there. You guys got it great, you know?
Oh yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are your favorite books for 2018, or movies or TV shows?
Oh man,
I think there's a lot of TV. I probably won't touch TV shows, but
Well, there's The Good Place and Mrs. Maisel. Those
okay,
are
I watched Good
amazing.
Place. I love Good Place. Yeah, fine.
The Good Place.
I don't know. Movies have been kind of bleh this year.
The Rise and Fall of Dinosaurs was the best book about climate change I have ever read.
Really? Okay. Putting that on my list now.
It's paleontology and paleobiology, and the dinosaurs lived in a less stable climate. And if you wonder why there are big sites where many, many dinosaurs died, it has to do with their unstable climate. Makes you want to go, oh, we really shouldn't screw that up.
Good luck with that. Then.
Do you have a favorite book? Are you just going to say Lord of the Rings because that's the book you read every year, or this whole set of books you read every year?
No, I don't read it every year. It's like every 5. Nothing stands out that I read that was really great this year. It's kind of been not a great year for books. I'm trying to think.
I can't believe you're still reading the book you're reading. You're like, pick it up every day, and you're like, this is
I'm like
so
90%
dumb.
done, and it's boring, but I have to finish it now.
Got to power through it.
God, yeah, no, I feel bad because I don't really have any. I need to find some better books.
We have many of them. There are many good books. I don't know why you keep reading the boring ones.
Because they're the ones that what? The same books you're reading, some of them.
Yes,
I've
but
been
I only
reading,
gave it 3 stars.
I don't track your ratings on. 3 stars is pretty good for your ratings.
I'm all nice
Very
on
discerning.
Twitter, but I'm really
Yeah.
mean on Goodreads.
Oh.
Okay, Chris, what about you?
He'll have something.
He'll have something.
Energy and Civilization. I think I've talked about it a couple times because it's going real slow, but it's like every time I keep reading before bed, so it's like, slapping me in the face. But
Yeah.
but it's really, so it's basically about how energy has changed and like energy consumption and food and how like farming has changed everything. It's basically using energy as an excuse to talk about civilization and how it's changed. So it's great.
Cool.
Vaclav Smil. It's very, very good. I think I found it on a Reddit list or something, but yeah, that's a good one. All my other ones are like marketing books and lame, so don't listen to those.
I might have read Sourdough this year, so that would be my favorite book of the year.
Oh, that
that?
goes
I thought I read it
into-
last year, but it might be this year.
into which episodes did you like this year?
Mm.
And I know one of Chris's favorites was when we interviewed the author of Sourdough, Robin Sloan. And
Oh, yeah,
he's a best-selling author and really had nothing to do with Embedded, and it was so fun.
Yeah,
We had a lot that weren't
why-
really Embedded related this year.
Yeah, Sunshine Jones was
I've
this year too.
noticed that. I've noticed that you guys really don't stick to the embedded all the time, but that's okay. I think that people are there for the variety of conversation.
We had the Recruiter
Don't you
this
think?
year too. I
Right,
hope so.
right,
I mean, otherwise they're
Well,
all
we've-
gone.
I've had a lot of good shows this year, and they're all connected to the experience of being in tech in some way. That's all it needs to be.
The theme of people who are on our show is people I want to talk to. So it's
Yeah. We should rename the show People Alicia Wants to Talk to. I've thought about that. .fm.
That would work, yeah. I always point people at me and Dave talk about a lot of the same stuff over time, where we talk about the news and things like that, and that's still going strong, actually. But I always point people at the guest episodes to start with. I think that's the best place to start. I really enjoyed I did 10 episodes in 4 days at camp this year. And so
yes, and they were fun
was-
and weird and good. I really enjoyed
Yeah.
that.
I was I was editing podcast in a tent by lantern light at 1 a.m. most nights. So that was a little weird. I was like whispering into a microphone, like, "Welcome to the Amp Hour. This is Chris Campbell."
Would you like to be scared?
Yeah, right. So that was a lot of fun. I mean, I don't know. This is the reason we still do this, however many years later, is because it's very rewarding for us. I think that hopefully people recognize that. We're doing it for the audience, but we wouldn't keep doing it unless it was fun for us too. And so I think I just saw the Jerry Ellsworth episode was posted onto the like a Reddit a couple days ago, and that's Jerry's been on our show 4 or 5 times now, and this last one was talking about how working with naming consultants for the demise of Cassiar.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I saw that. It sounded like just so much wasted money. It was so painful to listen to.
Yeah, but also funny. I mean, Jerry's great.
Well, yeah, it was also interesting and funny.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot out there.
It's hard because we do so many, and both of us, we do so many, and I can't even remember when a particular interview was. And sometimes people will say something like, oh, you remember what you said on episode 197? I'm like, no. Not at all. I don't remember.
But I'm
on that show. Let me go search.
Very flattered that you do remember that. That's usually what I say, is because, yeah, people saying that is very, very kind of them.
It is very kind.
I did have that last week with Jeff and Dave, and like we were talking about signal integrity people and how there was like 3 big names, and I was like, oh yeah, but we never got Dr. Howard Johnson on our show, and then I was like, oh
Wait,
no, we did. Sorry, I could not remember at all.
Yeah. So when people ask favorite episodes, it's like, oh, I don't even remember what we've done, and I don't listen to them except editing, so I don't have the same experience that other people do. I mean, I remember sort of ones, oh, I really enjoyed talking to that person, but I don't know specifically why or what we said. So yeah, it's hard. Yeah. But it's like, it's like asking musicians what their favorite stuff is. Like, well, I made that record. I don't listen to it.
It is interesting too when it's like a song. Like I think I heard that from Billy Joel. He gave his top 5 songs, and one of them was like a song that most people do not list in his top 5. And that's nice because it's like that it's something special about it. But then you listen to it, you're like, yeah, I'll go back to the hits. Thanks.
Yeah. There are these things that we've done this year that have sort of sunk. Like, one of the good things about our podcast, is even when I'm like, okay, that show sucked, somebody almost always tells me they liked it. And even if I loved a show, usually people will say they liked it. But then there are other things Christopher and I have done this year that we worked really hard on them, and they were really cool.
We're going to go into this.
But nobody noticed.
Okay. Well, no, this is the time. This is the time to do a callback and be.
Oh,
it's exactly. I don't know. I mean, if Dave was here, he'd probably talk about like his whiteboard videos never got they're like technical and take more time, and I personally think they're better. But like the mass audience doesn't care about them as much. We don't really do all that much special stuff here. So what are you talking about?
So for me, she's talking about my cover music project and my other music projects. Nobody listens to music, or they don't like it. Either way. The cover thing was and still is a thing to keep me engaged in making things. And I put it out there as kind of a milestone or deadline or keep me honest kind of thing. So I don't really care if nobody listens to it, but then it's hard to not care if nobody listens to it.
Right.
So if I don't get feedback, I mean, don't even get negative feedback. Like if somebody came and said, that was great, but you could have done this.
I listened. That would be fine. That's all I really want to hear.
Yeah. Well, I listened, or I didn't really like that. Even is fine. But so it's hard to make things and not get any traction. And but that music has been like that for a while. And even though I know some of the stuff that my brother and I and our bands have produced is good because we played live and people come up to us and throw money at us and do strange things and invite us to go play parties and things. So we know at some level that we are engaging, but recorded stuff on the internet, I just doesn't go anywhere, and I don't know that there's a way to make it go anywhere. Yeah, that was my thing. And you had your zines?
The llamas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked really hard
the
to
drawings.
make the llama drawings about different IoT technologies. And I did it for Supply Frame for their magazine, but it turned out that we didn't know how to print it properly. And so it didn't get into their paper magazine. It got on to electronic. But even then I was like, okay, I'll put it on my website and it'll be really cool because I worked really hard on it and I think it looks neat. And nobody cared. Nobody cared at all.
Yeah.
which is fine. Not everybody needs to love everything I do. And I do it more for myself. I have to remind myself that.
Yeah.
But that and some blog posts, and it's just it's
I think
hard.
the thing is like the closest thing that I have that you're talking about is like I'll post a show and like, you know, one or two people will retweet it. You know, it's like I think a really good guest has been on the show and people would be interested in whatever. And there's just, you know, a couple of people that are interested in it. And then, you know, I'll post some offhanded tweet about silliness and it just resonates with more people. It's like a mass market thing versus a specific thing. And like, I don't know, it just feeds back into my nothing's harder than getting people to give a crap about something on the internet. I think the easy way to do it is to, you know, copy what other people are doing and just slightly vary it and be snarky with things. And if you're going to make something new, it's going to, you know, be tough. But that's always been the case.
Well, and you just got to keep doing
anything else.
And you have to, thing I've come to realize, you have to decide what you're doing it for. Because if you're doing it for adoration, that's probably not a good approach.
But it is tough when you put a lot of work into.
But it's hard not to have
of course,
positive feedback or any feedback. Yeah.
Oh, but you put a lot of work into a podcast or a blog post or even, you know, a project you're working on, and then you tweet about it 3 times and you get a couple of retweets and maybe somebody likes it if you're lucky, and then you post a picture of your dog and you get like 20 retweets and 20 likes, and you're like, let's talk about what I wanted here.
That's just I think this is just the modern conundrum, and the more controversial it is too, the more it'll take things on, you know.
Oh
Yeah.
Well, see, okay, I've been picking the wrong cover songs.
Exactly.
Now I got some ideas.
And I just saw Chris posted a oatmeal comic about this, huh? Yeah. Okay, we'll post that. That's a good way to end, I think, because I have to go. It's holidays here, and my nephews are about to come knock on the door, I think. And,
it's not holidays here.
And
well, he's in a different time zone.
Yeah.
He's in a different.
I live in the future.
You're in a different holiday zone.
That's right. We're closer to cocktail hour around here, so you know that is a different holiday zone for sure.
It's been really good to talk to you.
Yeah.
I look forward to these.
Yeah.
Even though we talk a lot online, sometimes it's just nice to say hello, sort of in person.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get to see each other in person in the coming year. Like I said, I might hop on a plane and just come escape to not Midwest weather in the winter here.
It's not super great here right now, but
don't tell me these things. I'll find out when I get there.
It was sunny today and warmish.
That's
a big
warm.
deal. Yeah.
It was
63
I'm in Buffalo
really
right
warm
now, so
to him.
Buffalo
it's much
is
worse.
Icy. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyways,
I don't know how you close your
happy
show.
New
So
Year. Yeah, and all that stuff, and now a Winnie the Pooh quote, I'm sure. Yeah.
no, actually, I don't have any quote today.
Oh.
It was Happy New Year and go build good things, and thank you to everyone for listening.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.